What's up? Welcome to All For You Stories. Real stories to get you to think different so you can act different. Let's go. Empty seats. Since the church opened its doors 2 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Mayweather have only missed 2 services, and the services they missed were because of the same event. It happened a few years ago. Mr. and Mayweather just got off the phone with their oldest daughter when a pounding at the door shook the entire side of the house. Before anyone could answer, the police busted in with guns drawn, screaming directions no one could understand. Mr. Mayweather instinctively ran toward his wife, but got intercepted by an officer who stood about 6'3" with shoulders that took up most of the doorway. He charged into Mr. Mayweather, knocking him into a wall. The wall cracked and crumbled as he melted to the floor and lost consciousness. Mrs. Mayweather heard her husband cry out, the thunderous sound of him crashing against the wall, and then silence. She knew something had happened and screamed his name. He did not respond, so she pleaded with any officer who would listen. Please don't kill my husband. Please don't kill him. The officers ignored her pleas, pinned her to the floor, and cuffed her hands behind her back. Her requests turned into cries, which eventually became prayers. The police rummaged through their home with no regard for their belongings. They knocked over what they could knock over, threw what could be thrown, and smashed what they could smash. Once they had done as much damage as seemed possible, the officers in uniforms left, leaving 3 detectives in suits. One of the detectives spoke to Mrs. Mayweather in the bedroom, one talked to Mr. Mayweather at the kitchen table, and the other questioned the onlookers who had gathered outside. These officers actually treated them like people and even let them see each other to verify the other was okay. The detectives asked them questions, but the Mayweathers refused to answer, instead stating, "I need a lawyer." But their noncompliance changed when they heard their son's voice at the door. Mr. Mayweather immediately got out of his chair and ran towards the front of the house. The detective blocked the doorway, and Mr. Mayweather knew better than to touch him. Instead, he screamed, "Don't touch my son!" The Mayweathers became more willing to speak, knowing their son was there. Mrs. Mayweather held her husband's hand and explained, "I do not know why you are here. We live here with our 17-year-old son. He is a senior at Westchester High, has a 3.9 GPA, and will be leaving for college soon, just like his 2 sisters. None of us have ever been in trouble with the law." The detective saw the sincerity in Mrs. Mayweather's eyes and examined the pictures now cracked and scattered on the floor. They huddled in the hallway and soon began to feel embarrassment, anger, and a little bit of guilt, knowing that someone, somewhere in the department, made a big mistake. If the department figured out who made a mistake, they were not saying. They confessed to going in the wrong house. Still, they insisted all of the damage to the home and Mr. Mayweather's injuries happened because of his overreaction. Their version had nothing to do with the truth and portrayed the Mayweathers as the aggressors who took a small error and turned it into a huge ordeal. For 2 weeks straight, they sat through a trial full of exaggerations, falsehoods, and straight-up lies. When it finally ended, they got a decent settlement, but nothing else, not even an apology. The whole situation challenged the Mayweathers' faith in God. But considering how bad things had gone for Breonna Taylor and countless others, they realized how blessed they actually were. However, their faith in the police and what they stood for was damaged beyond repair. The Mayweathers' son, Roschon, hated hearing the lies about his parents. They had spent their entire lives living the exact opposite of how the police described them. The night before the last day of the trial, Roschon had a dream. He dressed in a black uniform, fully decorated with stripes and pins. He led a ceremony, handing out badges to men and women who had just graduated. He controlled the entire ceremony, and everyone stood when he wanted them to stand, sat when he told them to sit, and spoke when he told them to speak. The thing about this dream is it seemed real, like something meant to be. It felt different than anything he had ever felt before. From the depths of his soul, he knew he not only would become a police officer, he had to become a police officer. But that would mean going against his parents, who had already laid out the plans for exactly how his life would go. He would take care of business in high school, graduate from college, and start a career. It was destined for his sisters, who would soon graduate from San Diego State and Berkeley, and would be his path as well. About a month after the trial, Roschon sat down with his parents and had the most difficult conversation of his life. When he told them he would go to the local junior college to position himself to get into the police academy, they were disappointed. "That's not the plan," they said several times. Once Roschon finished explaining, his mother asked, "You want to be one of them?" Roschon understood where they came from. A part of him even felt the same way. But he also knew the dream he had came from God, and if he were to be obedient to Jesus, like his parents always taught him to be, he would have to follow his plan. So after going back and forth for a while, he brought closure to the conversation by stating, as respectfully as he could, "This is what Jesus wants me to do, and I gotta do it." They did not talk about it again. Roschon went about executing his plan, while his parents hoped he would change his mind. Time passed, and nothing changed. Roschon received his associate's degree and moved out of his parents' house, and instead of transferring to a 4-year college, he entered the police academy. When he completed the academy, graduation fell on a Sunday. He gave invitations to everyone who mattered to him, everyone who he wanted to make proud. His sister showed up. Pastor O left his preaching duties to Deacon Smalls and joined them. Unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Mayweather sat in the same 5th-row aisle seats they always sat in on Sunday, half listening to Deacon Smalls' sermon about obedience. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Please take the time to like, discuss with someone else, and then do what needs to be done. Peace.